My name is Michael Hopkins, Chief Marketing Officer at VINCUE and host of Q the Next Leader, an exclusive automotive industry podcast by VINCUE. Today's episode is a special one because the conversation was actually hosted by Danny Zaslavsky, President of VINCUE. Last week, he sat down with two industry titans, arguably the architects behind the first major digital transformation in our industry. Chip Perry, founding CEO of Autotrader.com and later the CEO of Cox Automotive, and his longtime friend and colleague Steve Greenfield, former Vice President of Product and Business Development at Autotrader.com. Danny, thanks for sitting down. First question I have to ask you is, if there's a dealer listening right now, why should they care about this conversation?
I grew up using the solutions that changed my dealership and I know changed the automotive landscape, that these two guys had the courage and the vision to go identify the right talent to bring the weapons needed for the industry at that time. And I think that's so cool.
During the interview, you talked about how you met Chip Perry a few years ago, which is a great story.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what it's been like knowing Chip and learning from Chip.
Well, okay, so, certainly he's a friend, but I will tell you, he's been a mentor, not just to me, but the guy is so curious and not just curious about how to make big moves, but it's all the little moves, the essential moves, right? How do we serve the customer better? How do we solve the problem better, faster? He taught me an acronym that I thought was really cool, DISC, D-I-S-C, does it sell cars? And I go, how do you use that? He goes, well, in any decision that they were making, in any feature they were creating, any solution that they were architecting, does it sell cars? And if it does, let's pour more resources into that so we can bring it to market. If it doesn't, maybe we should not. And as we think about that, how do we do it at VINCUE? We think about, does it create efficiency? Does it create profitability? And if it does both, then let's build it. Ultimately, does it sell cars? I thought that was so cool.
Getting to hear Chip and Steve talk together, I think, is really special, right? And you can see how these two guys work together over the last couple decades to create this landscape that now defines our industry. And same principles in a lot of ways, right? Steve, though, the analytical mind behind him, I think is so cool. Tell me a little bit about what it's like learning from him and working with him.
Yeah, Steve doesn't just speak regionally or nationally, he speaks now internationally, right? And he's talking about the state of the automotive industry. He's talking about what things we should be aware of that's coming. Is direct-to-consumer gonna work? Is autonomous driving gonna influence the industry? In my opinion, he's got one of the clearest and one of the most unbiased views of the industry, which I think is really important to listen to. So to have him here telling us that we're going in the right direction, serving our dealers in the right way, is not only a compliment, but it's also a huge resource, because every one of our team members, from developers to onboarding to performance management to salespeople, all want to know that we're making an impact. And so to have Steve and to have Chip here helping us, guiding us so that we can serve bigger and better, we know we're going in the right way.
Absolutely. It was a very special day for us. It's a great conversation.
Yep.
I hope you guys all enjoy this podcast on Q the Next Leader.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be here today at VINCUE. It's a company on the move, a company making a big difference in automotive, retail, all across America, accelerating its growth rate. And it's exciting to see the dynamic and behind the curtain. We're here today seeing how the sausage gets made. And actually, it's they say the sausage is not so pretty. The sausage is actually pretty exciting here to see this. So thank you for having us here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us, Danny.
Yeah.
It's really energizing. You guys are in a new space, which is really nice, as you can see from the background here. And the employees are energized. We're honored to be here today. And it's exciting to see you guys. I think you guys, in some ways, are a disruptor. But in some ways, sort of you're entering your adolescence years, right?
Totally.
You've had a good track record. You've gained the muscle now to really start sprinting here. And I think the next 5 to 10 years for this company is going to be very, very exciting.
You two were leading a big company and saw a need in automotive to bring solutions to solve the problems of merchandising, syndication, inventory management. Can you talk for a minute about kind of what started that and what did you learn from it?
Well, back in the early days of the internet coming into the automotive industry, a lot of the basics that we have today didn't even exist. So at Autotrader.com back then, our idea was to help dealers reach the car buying public in a new way, not advertising individual cars like they did in a newspaper or putting display ads in newspapers, but enable their entire inventory to be searched 24/7, and in the process build for consumers what they would think of as the MLS of the car business. But at that point, when we started, there's no electronic digitization of inventory that could be made available to the public through a search process. So a lot of things got pioneered back in those days. But the vision was to make it easy for people to find the car they wanted to buy, and to make it very cost-effective and powerful for the dealer to reach consumers that they may not have been able to find any other way, by enabling them to be transparent about what their inventory was online in an online mode. And that point,
and that was Autotrader, which you were the founder of.
Yeah, back in those days, yes. And this was a time when dealers feared more the transparency of the internet than they appreciated or thought positively about the efficiency or the opportunities it would create for them. So besides the technology being built, the underlying kind of railroad tracks and data pipelines to enable the industry to digitize itself, which we were part of, one of the early companies that did all that work, helping dealers understand what the opportunity was.
Yep.
And it was more upside than downside. So, we had a great time helping dealers see the upside.
Yep.
And one of our mantras was always to use data, and particularly around performance. And we love to look at how well dealers were performing in our marketplace, find metrics that were interesting for them to grasp, and then force rank, find out who is doing well and why, and then share that with dealers. So even though we were an digital advertising sales team, we brought digital advertising opportunity to the dealer, our approach was always figuring out how we can help them win. And the best way to help them win is to show them how they're performing in a competitive marketplace with data that they can't see inside their own store. It has to come from a third party. So those are some of the things we did to help the industry adopt this thing called the internet and all the digital marketing tools around it. But then later, all the software around the ecosystem became an interesting target of opportunity that Steve and I chased together.
So I get a phone call. I was working for Manheim, a sister company, now all under Cox Automotive, but at that point it was a separate division. In mid-November 2009, my phone shows Chip Perry. Like, interesting. The CEO of one of our divisions is calling me. So he says, Steve, don't know if you're available for breakfast tomorrow morning. And I said, of course. He said, meet me at 7 o'clock at the Waffle House by the office. Like, okay, this will be an interesting meeting. One of many over the years with this guy. So he says, look, I want to share something with you in confidence. Cox, the parent company, is going to sell off a minority stake in Autotrader, the fastest growing division by far at that point. I need someone to come over, report to me to oversee acquisitions. And by the way, I've got a list of potential acquisitions in my back pocket. And he pulled out this list, and he showed me this list. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. He already had 5 companies on there, right? I wish I had that list now. I should have got him to sign it, right? That list is gone, but still I remember the companies on that list. I looked at him for about 20 seconds, and I said, I'm in. And he said to me, like, how can you possibly make a decision that fast? I said, well, hold on a second here. So you're telling me that I had a chance to come over, report to you, work for the fastest growing division within the company, and oversee acquisitions? I said, where's the downside?
Nice of you to say, Steve.
So I did anyway. Just after that, I joined the week of NADA 2010, and in quick succession, we bought over $1 billion worth of companies. But I'll say this: so I had the benefit of joining 10 years in. Right, Chip had already built a huge business, by far the dominant marketplace in the U.S. Number 2 paled in comparison at that point. He had 20,000 dealers, but they were selling advertising solutions to them. And to his point about data, we could come in at that point and watch the dealers that were most successful on Autotrader. And the attributes were very simple, the same as today. Dealers that really paid attention to merchandising, take photos and take high quality photos, and many of them. Be very deliberate with the comments. Price to market, right? Things that you guys talk about all the time. It's basic building blocks of success with advertising for car dealers. Back then, many dealers didn't. They would use a default photo, a stock photo. They wouldn't take the time to do photos. They definitely wouldn't take the time to craft a story in the comments of the vehicle. And many dealers weren't pricing at market at all, right? They saw that as sort of a race to the bottom. So it drove a lot of our acquisition strategy. But what my first task was to come in and build an ecosystem map of all the software vendors, where we were at the center of the universe, and all the software vendors, and where there were already existing intersections back to AutoTrader, and where we could build value, right? Because our mindset was to think about where dealers, we had 20,000 dealers, what products were adjacent that we could go hunt and acquire and then tuck in and build value and build a better together value proposition. So when you think about the companies that we bought, vAuto, HomeNet, VIN Solutions, all of them were basically on this map, and we were able to be very deliberate over the next couple of years with which companies we wanted to acquire and why. And we had a thesis, an investment thesis. It didn't always play out, but an investment thesis in terms of like, if we were to buy this company and then energize the same sales force selling into the same dealer base, why would we do that? And what value could we unlock by acquiring these companies? So it was a very exciting time. That's now 15 years ago, right? So it's distant memories, but at the same time, it's interesting now to come full circle.
But yeah, the principles don't change.
Principles don't change.
Methods do.
That's right.
And our mindset was, what problems can we help the industry solve by having another company be part of our organization?
Yeah.
So I had earlier in my career, I had worked at McKinsey & Company, where we had done studies of mergers and acquisitions in a lot of different industries. And one of the things you learn in that world is most acquisitions fail. So I came at this with a skeptical mind, but also a curious one. So when we built Autotrader.com, from the beginning, the mindset was always, what problem can we help consumers and dealers and OEMs solve through digital solutions that we would create? That was the mindset of the company.
And founder-led.
Yes, and our belief was that if we created great products that people would want to use, we would find a way of wrapping a business model around that usage and create revenue streams that enable us to build a successful company. But it was always the revenue was thought of after the idea of how to create value, and the problem was solved first. So when we looked at the acquisitions, every one of them with Kelley Blue Book and vAuto and VIN Solutions, we had some ideas on how we could help dealers and consumers and OEMs by working with that company. Really wanted at that point in time kind of avoid this idea of building an empire. It wasn't about that at all. But we could see that because software had evolved around us, and we had so much data in our company, and we had a sales team that could help these new sister companies. Yep. We went on a tear, and a lot of good things happened, I think. But it also ended up with the industry then started to wonder about, okay, we had so much proliferation of all these products, and dealers got loaded up with all these tools. And one of the mantras that you hear from dealers all the time when you talk to an owner is, they're sick and tired of hearing about some new tool that somebody in one of their stores wants to buy because they're not using the ones they already have.
Right.
So the industry has evolved with all these new solutions.
Yep.
We were part of creating that problem, but in the beginning, the idea was to solve problems, not create problems.
Yep.
But I think now today, one of the things I'm excited about VINCUE is because you bring under one roof, under one interface, so many solutions that don't require logins and sign-ons and clunky data transfers from tool A to tool B to tool C. The industry now has a problem with the proliferation of products and tools has created a proliferation of pain points.
Yeah.
New ones, and they're popping up all the time.
Yeah.
And as I walked around here today, listening to the development work that you're doing. The fact that you have this such strong feedback loop and tradition and history and culture of listening to the dealers. One of the things that I always admired about your company was something similar to what I saw in the early days of VAuto. And one of the reasons why we acquired it back then was we saw a dealer with the ideas to drive the product, working closely, collaborating with software developers to make those solutions real and actually usable. So what you've done working with Chris Hoke here all these years as a dealer who has deep understanding of dealership operations and workflows, constantly taking your personal experience and building it into the product, but now going way beyond that. Well, because you have so many hundreds of dealers who you're listening to.
Yeah.
And what you're doing now is systematically looking in the nooks and crannies of the industry for all these points of inefficiency and time wasting and data issues. You're now fixing these things. And even though the industry's come as far as it has, we're 25 years into this internet, digital software revolution, I think there's as many problems to be solved going forward as have already been solved in the past.
You're right.
And you have that future, that runway of unmet, unsolved problems.
Some of the weapons, because we truly believe that they are weapons, not tools, create efficiency, right? How do I get time back in the day? How do I zoom out and instead of looking at appraisal as its own silo and inventory management as its own silo and merchandising its own silo, new car management as its own silo, how do I look at a vehicle lifecycle management system, zoom out? Because then now when everybody sings off the same song sheet and then when data sings off the same song sheet, you uncover more weapons that create efficiency and then profitability. And so that's the journey I feel like we are on. 2 years ago, we didn't know the doors that would be unlocked by the problems we solved then. And you just talked about that, right? And now I feel like we are just beginning to solve the bigger problems where around vertical integration. I hear that, right? How do we use less solutions but have a bigger impact? Dealers are thinking about that. How do we take an individual and make them behave like 2.5 of themselves? We are thinking about that internally, and I know dealers are thinking about that themselves. How do I give a solution to somebody who's green in the automotive industry, but get them to behave like somebody who's been in it for 20 years in the best of ways, right? Those are things that we think about, and those are things that I know we've been talking about.
And you have a culture here of listening to the dealer and then working on the solution and bringing the solution back to them. I can remember in my time at Auto Tradercom, when we found a dealer who had a great idea and we actually implemented it, it was the most fun thing to put a phone call into that dealer and say, guess what?
Yeah.
The thing you asked us to do, it just went live.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you would do that
it's the best feeling ever.
All the time.
That's why we do our sprints. I mean, we don't do releases like every 6 months. We do them every 3 weeks to 4 weeks because we're excited about the weapons that we're putting out there.
And the passion here is palpable around solving these problems for the dealer, the ones that they think are important, that you can make a meaningful difference in how they can operate their business.
Yeah.
And that is so exciting when you do that. And looking at your development plans we saw this morning and the recent accomplishments, it's fascinating that you're working down in these nooks and crannies that makes so much of a difference in somebody's day-to-day life. I heard about one of these ideas where one of your dealers suggested that on a dealer's lot, there ought to be a one-to-one communication between the car and the customer around what the new car incentives are and what the real price is.
Yep.
When you're one-to-one, you can do that.
That's right.
So a dealer says, put a QR code on the car, make it possible for me to one-on-one communicate with my customer in a unique way. And boom, you do it. And that turns out to be applicable across a lot of dealerships.
Steve, what do you see going on right now around what dealers are, I guess, looking out in the distance and preparing for around acquisition, around pricing? Obviously, there's pressures like Amazon coming into the marketplace and all these different things that we're thinking about today that we didn't even think about a few years ago, right?
Right. Yeah, I would characterize it as there's controllables and uncontrollables. So, there's a lot in the news cycle right now. We've got tariffs, We've got potentially more shortages of new cars for a couple of reasons. One, certain brands may not be importing certain models into the US. We have a shortage of off-lease cars that have to work themselves through the system. So dealers are listening and hearing this noise. I think at the same time, OEM pressures that are under pressure as well. And is my OEM going to be healthy? Most notably right now, Nissan, but there'll be others, right? In terms of like, if they aren't healthy, are they going to be building products that are desirable to consumers? We've had the noise around EVs, and if my OEM was all in on EVs and now backpedaling a little bit, and is that going to mean I'm going to have product on my lot? Especially if incentives go away. But with dealers, you can worry about all those things. But the business model for the last 50 years has been eerily defensible and consistently profitable. And there's been a lot of business model innovation over the last 50 years. And I think right now dealers have to think about, what can I control? Well, what you can't control is the health of your automaker. You can't control whether or not they're going to be building attractive product that consumers want. What you can control are things like, how much back-end profit are you making on a car deal? What am I stocking on my lot in terms of used vehicles? How am I going to be creative with where I'm sourcing those vehicles? How can I make sure that I can take market share through pricing levers? Back to what we said about merchandising. Can I get a leg up vis-a-vis my competition around merchandising, right? Reach into pools of consumers that I might not have reached into before. So I think for dealers, practically, there's always going to be a lot of noise, a lot of quote-unquote disruptors out there that could change and evolve the business. I think dealers have been, from my 25 years in the industry, great entrepreneurs with a good nose for sniffing out where there are opportunities to drive more revenue and profitability. And I think they'll continue to say, what within my portfolio of my business can I control and what can't I control? You shouldn't ignore the things you can't control. Just like, I can't do anything about those anyway. I shouldn't be losing sleep over them. The things I can control are the levers that I want to pull. VINCUE uniquely, I think, meets dealers where they are and says, hey, there are things you can control, right? We can help you be more creative with how we're going to help you source vehicles. We can definitely help you understand how to be as aggressive as you can when you acquire those cars, but still maintain a margin on them. You guys help dealers price. You help them merchandise. You help them get into maybe pockets of consumers that they would never otherwise get into.
Yep.
So, I think that just practically, the business model to me is amazingly durable and profitable. But, dealers are going to have to continue to be on their best game, pulling levers that they can control, and doing so with valuable partners like VINCUE.
Appreciate you saying that.
And some vendors have kind of matured in their product suite. And there's always in this industry up-and-coming companies that invade a space and challenge the incumbent leader with a better way of doing business. I think that there's a pattern of that happening in different segments. Mm-hmm. It's happened in the CRM world. Mm-hmm. It's happened in the F&I world.
Right now it's happening in the DMS space.
It's happening in the DMS world. Mm-hmm. And inventory management, vehicle lifecycle management has had a market leader that you and I were deeply involved with. Mm-hmm. But now there's this up-and-coming, rapidly growing challenger mm-hmm. that is fueled by innovation mm-hmm. and a passion for listening to dealers mm-hmm. that I think is propelling its future, that we find very exciting here. It's called VINCUE.
I mean, you saw our team in action today, right? You can see how curious and hungry we are. But you said something just a minute ago around how many things that are controllable and uncontrollable. But there's, with AI, and everybody's talking about it, we've been thinking about how to predict, right? And predictive analytics is different than backwards looking information, right? My dad always looked at MMR. He wanted to know what did MMR bring? Because that was the way he would manage water, right? But today, we want to be able to look at forward-looking data. How long is that car going to sit on my lot? What should I be buying and why? Is market day supply the thing I should be looking at, or are there other metrics that I should be considering? And we know that there's a game of technology that we're playing in order to improve the weapons our dealers use, but there's also a game of psychology, right? Because you're unseating old patterns. So what would you say to the people that are still fighting old patterns, and how do you get them to be curious enough to understand that there is a better way forward?
Yeah, so I would say two things, and part of that will be mirroring back some of the language you used earlier. There's a slide I'm using with dealers right now that show, in my lifetime, three different technologies that were transformational, but at the moment, we were quick to dismiss them. One was the personal computer. The first iterations of personal computers, you're too young. We remember, were very, very clunky, right? Almost unusable. I mean, you would try these things, you're like, well, what is this going to be had for, right?
Bill Gates even said he didn't think the PC would go anywhere.
Right. Then we had the internet, right? And the very early internet, you had to plug it into a phone line. It would crash all the time. You were trying to find data, and it was very clunky. And unless you were truly visionary, you couldn't look at this and say, what might this become? Guys like this, it took to be pioneers in that era. And then, we had in 2007, Steve Jobs stand up and show the iPhone. And I was a BlackBerry user. To this day, I still miss that BlackBerry keyboard. I still find the iPhone keyboard very frustrating. Here we are, whatever number of years, 20 years later. But how transformational now has that device that we've all got in our pocket be just to make our life much easier, more productive, et cetera? Well, we're on the cusp of possibly a more transformational technology, which is AI. Right now, it's very easy to dismiss, to say, like, look, ChatGPT, yeah, sure, I can ask it questions, and sometimes it hallucinates, and it's kind of like maybe a slightly improved way of me querying data versus Google, but that misses the point, right? Once this gets embedded everywhere, then I think it's going to make all of our lives much more productive, right? And you start off, as a simple co-pilot. I'm going to pick up 20 or 30% productivity. Right now, the earnings calls of Google and of Microsoft, the CEOs are saying that about 30 to 40% of the software code is now being automatically coded by AI.
Yep.
That's quickly going to get to 80, 90% of all code. And we're going to see then, to your point, the multiplicative effect of, like, when we've got agents that when you go home at night, you can say, hey, VINCUE, can you do all these things for me and then give me a report when I come back in the morning? Now this thing's making recommendations to me to up my game. You guys have enough of a dealer base now that you're kind of a living, breathing best practice machine. You should be helping any new dealer that joins understand the collective intelligence of the hundreds of dealers that you've got already. Right? So it brings everybody up, right? It brings the game of everybody up. So I think there's an interesting opportunity here. We're on the cusp of an interesting opportunity where we can effectively redefine the software stack that a dealer uses. So I'll circle full back to what you said earlier. So I'm hoping that dealers think of this in two ways, right? One is simply from an efficiency standpoint. Mm-hmm. Turnover has always been a problem. Hiring great employees is always going to be a problem. But if your existing employees are more efficient, and then the next phase is you can actually, when people retire or quit, maybe replace them with something that can automatically do their job relentlessly 24/7, as well, if not better, and it's going to learn and get better. And then you start thinking about it in terms of just moving from efficiency to being a weapon. So how does this then, partnering with folks like VINCUE, allow me to take market share and help achieve my business objectives? Now, those business objectives might be just offering a better CSI. Right? I just want to really provide the consumers with an awesome experience to make sure that I not only sell that consumer their current car, but I sell them their next 5 cars and sell all their family members' cars and build lifetime value. So I'm extracting much more profitability per customer acquisition. Or it could be even more aggressive with, like, no, I want to take market share from the guy across the street. Either way, you can be very thoughtful. VINCUE is very thoughtful about understanding a dealer's business goals. And then using this cutting edge technology and this environment we've got here, right? You guys are acting very much like a startup and forcing yourselves not to get ahead of yourselves, acting like a younger company to build cohesiveness with the employees, make sure they're very well connected with the dealers, and then building that feedback loop that Chip's talked about to make sure that you start with the dealer's business goals and then back into how you complement those business goals with the VINCUE product.
I also think it's exciting that the company has a belief that there's a human side to used car management and a personal feel that dealers have for who is their real competition. So you enable the dealer to surgically set determined comp sets. At the same time, you're leavening that now with AI. So the combination, I think, of of empowering the dealer's wisdom into the tool and augmented by AI that he or she wouldn't think of opportunities to change a price, to buy a car they wouldn't have bought. And you're starting to be able to see the market, and the competition is I think, fairly monolithically using one system.
You're right, and it's something we just did our first 20 group here in Kansas City, and a topic we talked about is this concept of where do your eyes go? When you're looking at any system, where do your eyes go? Are you looking at a book value? Are you looking at a comp set? Are you looking at price to market, cost to market? And that bias comes into play. And when you can imagine scaling where do your eyes go to a whole organization, you don't always get the best outcome. Yes. But our models have now enough data to be able to take considerations that any one person can't take on their own. Market demand data, sales data, CRM data, being able to unlock, if a car has 9 leads and 1 buys, the other 8 didn't. Where did they go? And why didn't we switch them to another vehicle, right? Trade cycle management, service to sales. These are all things now we can scale because of that model.
And if competitors have a certain pattern of behavior,
exactly
which
right,
you can determine, and by the way, that pattern of behavior is determined by essentially, the market leader's one-size-fits-all sort of monolithic pricing approach.
Yeah.
If you're studying those patterns of behavior, and the AI is then enabling your dealers to have the weapon to anticipate where they're going to go, I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Couple of things. This makes me really proud. I hope we're making you proud. I mean, the fact that you're here meeting our team, talking to our developers, talking to our performance team, talking to our sales team, giving us the confidence to know that we're headed in the right direction. We know hunger and grit isn't all that it takes. It also takes really smart people to keep guiding us. So thank you both very, very much.
Thank you for having us here. Wonderful day. You guys are on a roll. Sky's the limit here at VINCUE.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
We're very proud.